Okay, well, here we are at the free stand-up comedy class. Welcome. We're having fun. The goal is to learn how to become funnier, to do stand-up comedy where you stand up in front of an audience, make them laugh. I've been doing comedy. I'm in my 6th year now. And one of the goals was to bring a comedian, an actual comedian with experience to the class. My good friend Gordon Douglas and mentor volunteered. So I'm very excited to have him, and let's just have a good time with comedian Gordon Douglas. So here you go.
You were going to clap. I was going to say, thank you. And enthusiastic clap too. That is good. I'll do just a quick bio. You already set up the video and stuff, so we can almost have to watch, so you can see me in front of a real audience. That would be fun. But a little bit in terms of the biography and the story is I've been doing comedy for 40 years. My very first show was in 1977 with Bill Haley and the Comets. How I got there and what I did is chapter 7 in my book. So I've been doing comedy since 1977. I went out to Hollywood. I was on some big shows like Carol Burnett and Mike Douglas. I worked with people like Robin Williams and Ellen DeGeneres and Jerry Seinfeld and Jay Leno back in 1977, 78, before they were big. And they were in the same club for several weeks when I went out there to see if I could make it in Hollywood, which I did not. For a lot of reasons I could tell you about. But it's like going from the minor leagues to the majors, the level of talent, the amount of work they put in. I have been on the road full time for the last 10 years. I've been in 38 states, 4 countries, 5 cruise ships. I have hundreds of radio shows. I'm just now producing my own radio show. Hopefully it'll come out in Easter week on 11:80 a.m. in Philadelphia. It's on Fox News. It's called It's Time to Laugh with Gordon Douglas. And it's going to be a radio version of Laugh-In, featuring some of the people I get to work with now and my favorite comedians growing up. A mixture of new and old, fast-paced, back and forth comedy features, couple props, sound effects, 30 minutes of just, hopefully high-speed, high-energy, ADD kind of stuff. I was in New England last week. A friend got stuck with the blizzard, so I got to go fill in in New England, and I found out, that Tom Brady is depressed. It was just sad. He was so depressed, he went to the doctors, and when he was there, he said, "Well, I'm here, can I get a flu shot?" And the doctor said, "No." And he said, "Why not?" And he said, "Because you can't catch anything." It's like, no, I just so, an example of an old joke brought up to date. I love, especially for Philadelphia fans. And even mentioned in Super Bowl, I expected a little more. You're not Eagle fans out here? You're not Eagle fans?
I'm not a football
fan. No, the Cougars.
I believe green.
Yeah, that's good. So that's just a thumbnail sketch of where I've been. So I have written a book, which I'll plug right now. I happen to have a whole case of them in my car. I haven't put it on the market yet, but it's been out for about 6 weeks. It's already sold 700 copies. It's a comedy, chicken soup for the soul, biography, and a touch of Mad magazine. It's got a little bit of everything. It's 39 short chapters. I work out of Nashville. I have an agent in Nashville. I love saying that. It just sounds so impressive. I have an agent who called me minutes ago to see if I could be in Chicago tomorrow. And but my agent said, "Gordon, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. It helps us market you, and we can put comedian and author in it." So I said, "What do you want me to write?" And they said, "Well, write down your act. Write down the 10 funniest things you ever did. Write down the 10 stupidest things you ever did. 10 most embarrassing things you ever did. 10 things you wish you never did." And I did. I got sticky pads, put them all on the board, and came up with 80 ideas for chapters. And my wife said, "Well, these 10 kind of go with family. These 10 kind of go with your comedy career. These 10 are about life and principles." They came up with 39 3- and 4-page chapters. Every chapter begins with 4 to 6 jokes, from the Milton Berles, the Bob Hopes. Bob Hope, the most successful financial comedian ever. But that's okay. He probably died in the 90s, and he was 100. Him and George Burns lived to be 100. He was known, he started in vaudeville, started in burlesque, went on to vaudeville, then got his own radio show when radio was all that people had. And then he went on to early TV, had his own show, and went on to make like 40 movies called The Road to Morocco, Road to Rio, Road to Alaska, him and Bing Crosby and this group. And but what he was known for in the midst of all this fame is 41 straight years he went overseas to entertain the troops on the front lines. His biography is called Don't Shoot, It's Only Me. And he would not just go to the ships or to a base, he would take jeeps and go out under fire in Korea, in Vietnam, in World War II. And he would entertain 30 soldiers, him and a singer or dancer. Usually it was some really pretty girl, so he didn't have to be real funny. He just brought, but a phenomenal guy. So there's a whole chapter on Bob Hope in there. I learned a lot about comedy from him, although I never met. I read his biography. I have a whole ton of resources up here of things that will help us to think in terms of what are your goals, what are your careers, what do you do, what makes something funny. I'll share just real briefly how I started, and then I've got all kinds of notes. I got to tell you about Tommy Moore because he's amazing, how I met Tommy Moore. And he has a whole new book he just wrote, just came out a few weeks ago, called Joke Telling 101. It's how to tell a joke. 11 steps, looking at basic jokes. And then he has, I think, about 150, I forget what it says here. Yeah, over 100 comedians listed that he's worked with and their favorite joke. I'm on page 279, just in case you're interested. It's 270. But it's looking at different kinds of joke. Is it physical? Is it wordplay? Is it attitude? Is it a character? Is it political? And how different those jokes are. But his basic purpose of writing the book is to help everybody enjoy a joke and learn to tell it better. Because really, no matter what your career is, a sense of humor helps. So Tommy Moore is an amazing guy, his website, his career. So in my life, so how did I start? I was the angry herding kid in high school. A big part of my show, when I travel, I usually do a 1-hour show. Sometimes I open for singers, sometimes I do 5 and 10 and 8-minute bits. Learning how to do that was a whole different skill. But when I started, I was just telling jokes at parties. You know, everyone else was making out. I couldn't get a date. I just told jokes. I trying to hope somebody would like me. And then I went through Williamson Trade School in carpentry, and then when I graduated, I was coaching Little League. And the first day of Little League, all these little kids come with the giant gloves, and they try out, catch 3 grounders, throw 3 balls, take a swing, and all the coaches grade them, and then you have a draft. I was the new coach. I ended up with the kids nobody else wanted, and I had a short, chubby kid on my team, and he's waiting for his ride, and I saw this big, red Lincoln Continental pull up, and this lady gets out, and I was like, I know her. She's on TV all the time. She's in my photo album, which is over here. Julie DeJohn, who was very famous in the 50s and 60s and went on to be Frank Sinatra's opening act for 25 years. But she was on The Tonight Show 75 times. She was on hundreds of shows. You don't know her name. You wouldn't recognize any of her songs unless you know 50s and 60s music. But you would know Double Your Pleasure, Double Your Fun with Double Mint Gum. The Little League field. And her son is on my team. So I go over and, hey, your son's really good. He's not. And I said, I saw you on TV last week. People say I'm funny. How do you get into the show business thing? She said, well, give me a tape of your act. Cassettes were the rage in those days. Everybody was getting cassette players. So I didn't have an act. I didn't have a show. I just had stories I regularly told about what I did at the prom, what I did at this date, what I did at home, how I... Basically, the whole life, my attitude, my character, my voice is I screw everything up. You know, I'm the guy that got hurt at a healing conference. True story. How do you get hurt at a healing conference? I have a whole bit on that. But it's changing my first diaper, going on my first date, going on this stuff, doing my first service, whatever it was. I screw everything up. That became my bit. So I went home and got this $29 cassette player from Radio Shack. Told every funny story and joke I could into there, and I gave it to her. And she called me up and said, come over to my house. I go to the house. Again, she's a large woman, always wore a kimono. And she stood at the doorway and handed me my cassette and said, this is cute. And I'm all smiling. I'm like, well, thanks. And she said, people don't pay for cute. It was one of the best things I could have ever learned. People don't pay for cute. A smile is not enough in a comedy show. A 1-second laugh is not good enough in a comedy show. What does it take? I can tell you in a second. But she said, but you've got a gift. I can hear it in your voice. I can see it. You've got a gift. You take this 1-hour cassette. Give me 6 good minutes out of it. Get to a punchline every 15 seconds. You need to get a laugh every 15 seconds. No 2-minute stories for a 1-second laugh. You need 17 words, hit the punch. 17 words, hit the punch. You can get up to 25 words, but if you're beyond that, you're really, nobody. That's what you do at a bar. That's what you do at your house. Let me tell you about the guy who's going down the road, and 3 minutes later, it's like, you forget the punchline. It's like, oh, it's set up punch, set up punch, set up punch. And that's good if you can do that for 5 jokes or 10. But if you're doing 6 jokes a minute and you have to do that for an hour, it's a craft. There is a craft involved, but there's also a natural gifting. And she sat down with me for 6 months. And I like this thing about your prom. Now we need a better thing here. We need a new tagline there. We need to exaggerate the ending here. And she cut and pasted and worked. And after 6 months, she said, I think you're ready. And she said, I got a show with Bill Haley in the Comets. Now, do you know Bill Haley in the Comets?
Yeah.
1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, rock. Yeah, that's Bill Haley, considered the inventor of rock and roll. That song, and it was the theme for Happy Days for years. And there's a whole chapter in my book on that, how I got on and why we were doing a show for them. But my first show was for professional entertainers. Bill Haley was having a party, and I'm doing my very first show with Julie for an audience of 300 professional entertainers. and again, I keep saying in my book, I don't care if you buy the book, but it's in there, in the longer version. But the name of the guy we were honoring was Rudy Pompili. He was a saxophone player in Bill Haley's group who played the swinging sax, See You Later, Alligator. That marked his group was that swinging sax sound. And he had died. So we were doing a tribute to Rudy Pompili. So every half hour they would ring a bell, drinks are on Rudy, because he left money in his will, $30,000 to have a party in his honor in the 70s. And every half hour, drinks are on Rudy, and the whole theater, the nightclub was drinking up. And at 10 o'clock, and we're going to start our show. And I'm back in the bathroom going over my jokes, nervous as could be, about ready to throw up. And they're making his stage debut for the very first time. We're introducing a new comedian from Philadelphia, Gordon Douglas. And I go up on the stage spotlight. There's a band behind me with an actual boom. And I went out there, and I'm looking at all these celebrities that I see on TV. And I said, what an honor to be here tonight for an award-winning songwriter and international performer. And I forgot his name. I absolutely went blank. It seemed like 10 minutes. It was probably 10 seconds. But behind me, as big as the screen, is a picture of Rudy. And then there was a candle because he had died. And his name was plastered across the stage in 3-foot letters. And after I froze, I had 5-10 seconds, I just turned around and went, Rudy Pompili. And I read his name, the dead guy who had paid for the party. And the whole crowd roared because the kid was making fun of the dead guy who was paying for the party. 2 Jewish guys in the front were sitting there, and they said, this kid got chutzpah. And I relaxed, and I did my 10 minutes, and it went great. And now, all of a sudden, I'm known by 300 professionals. And I didn't work my way to the top. I just started at the top. And the next thing you know, I'm with people from Frank Sinatra, with Joey Bishop. I'm on TV shows. I'm traveling with Julie. And I spent 2 years at the top, and then got invited to Hollywood. So an amazing, amazing journey. And then after a couple of years, I gave that up to have a family and do stuff, which is what I'm most known for. Is my wife and I were told we couldn't have kids when we got married. So we took in a boy off the streets of Philadelphia, homeless, abandoned, abused, and that led to 2, that led to 3, that led to 6, that led to 12, that led to 14. And then 2 prisoners came to stay under an in-house arrest program with my father-in-law's stroke and my brother-in-law with Down syndrome. And then in the 10 years we took in all these boys, God blessed us with 5 babies the doctor said were impossible. And 4 before they told me what was causing it. It was the game we play in our house. It was fun. We do. Whenever people visit, we line up all our kids in the living room and we play a game. It's called Guess Which One is the Convict. And when you cover up the ankle bracelet, people can't tell. It's kind of fun. So that's a real short version of what I tell people when I go on the road. Of just, life surprises, things that don't go well. I am a storyteller that has learned to hit a punchline every so many seconds. So from there, we can look at joke structure, we can look at making a set, we can look at finding your voice, we can just, again, John has set up a projector if you want to see a couple of minutes in front of a live audience. I actually have like 3 hours of stuff on YouTube. Keep telling my kids to stop putting stuff on YouTube. You just want to sample, So really, it's your hour. I'm here just to help. People have helped me, and I love helping. I love seeing people meeting John for the very first time and just say, hey, go up and introduce me and tell a joke. And then anywhere I can, I try to bring somebody with me because it's so hard to get stage time. But it's hard. It's hard to where what your goal, if you want to get into show business, if you want to get paid, or you just want to be funnier. I mean, that's, we could talk about all kinds of stuff and the business part of it. Part of what I do about 100 shows a year and have for the last 10 years. I usually 2-3 a week. I fly almost every week. My normal audience is 500 to 1,000 people. I get huge audiences. I do conventions. I do corporate events. I do a lot of church events, which people say church events, but church is actually so much better because they pay twice as much as a club. The people are much nicer. You don't get booed and heckled at most churches. Some maybe, but really booing and heckling is nothing like the 70s and 80s. People are much nicer. The Gong Show days of the 70s, the Gong Show. Picture The Voice. You come out and you do your act. It could be anything. America's Got Talent. It was comedians, singers, dancers. But behind the 4 judges was a giant Chinese gong. And you came out and you got 40 seconds to do your thing. And if they liked you, you could keep going. If they didn't like you, they picked up the hammer, gong. And then every comedy club in America picked up the Gong Show theme. So every club you went to, they would have a small gong. And I remember I did 2 jokes and I saw them sway. I said, good night, folks. I waited. I got there at 8. I was like number 37 to get on stage that night. I was at like 11:30 at night and I got 2 jokes and I was done. It was so embarrassing. But that's what you had to do to deal with stuff. So I'm rambling just a lot of different things just to kind of give you a feel for my experience. I have worked with a lot of writers. I have worked with some producers. You had the Gene Perrette book. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is Gene Perrette. Do you know the name Gene Perrette? See, I just assume everybody knows my world. Do you know Gene Perrette?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gene Perrette wrote all the Carol Burnett shows. Carol Burnett?
Now that I remember.
She's even on infomercials. Carol Burnett's on infomercials. It was the #1 show for 12 years. It was a variety show, sitcom. They did skits. They did stuff. She had singers. But it was the #1 rated show for like 12 straight years. And Gene Perrette was the lead writer. He was the lead writer for Bob Hope for 25 years. He did all the Dean Martin roasts. He did all the Tim Conway specials. He's in his 80s and he's still writing. He has a podcast website thing, the Comedy Circle, that he writes like 100 jokes a week, and you can write and send them in. And if they get selected, they go on his thing, and then people can buy the jokes for like $5 a piece. And it's a neat thing. So yeah, Gene Perrette is in New York now, but he lived in LA for 30 years, and he's the reason I got to go to Hollywood. He's the reason I got to be on Carol Burnett and meet Bob Hope and all that kind of stuff. His book's one of the best ones on writing. I got stuff on writing jokes. Marlo Thomas, her dad was Danny Thomas, St. Jude. I got to do some stuff. She interviews 100 comedians and talks about what makes them funny, what got them funny, how they started, then has a bunch of their favorite jokes. There's like 500 jokes in there. George Burns, old people, who I'm most known for. Who do I look like? David Brenner. He just died last year. But he's in my book. I won a David Brenner lookalike contest. In the 70s, he was the Robin Williams before Robin Williams. He was the hottest, biggest comedian, and he's from Philly. A tall, skinny guy with a big nose, Jewish background, grew up blocks from me, 10 years older than me. And so I love the title of his book, There's a Terrorist in My Soup, which he wrote during 9/11 and stuff.
Wow.
He did a show the day of 9/11 in New York. He did a show. So should we cancel? He said, boy, if people don't laugh now, they'll never laugh. We got to do something. We can't just sit here. And it's a great story about that. So So I've got to meet some amazing people. Again, I'm just showing you some books you can look up, how much you want to read or do. But this guy called me, Tommy Moore, called me about 15 years ago. And he said, Gordon, Tommy Moore. I was like, who's Tommy Moore? I don't know. But he said, I'd like to take you to lunch. So I'm always for a free lunch. He said, how about tomorrow? And he named a restaurant. Sure. So I go there, and I don't know, but he's all dressed Hollywood, big hat, scarf, and doing stuff. Come on, he talks like the classic New York Jewish comedian. He has that rhythm and that voice of the what they call the Borscht Belt, all the cat skills and stuff. He has that rhythm. He said, tell your story. He begins every sentence with, tell your story, tell your story. So I'm driving down in a cab. He's legally blind, which I didn't know, so he can't drive. So he's in a cab. And he said, I've been doing comedy 50 years. I've been doing that. I work with Jimmy Durante. I work with all the big. I work with Bob Hope and Jack Benny. I work with Jay and the Americanos in a group. And he's been in Caesar's Palace for 3,500 shows in Las Vegas. He's done literally thousands and thousands of shows around the world. Did the USO tours for the troops. And he's from Philly. And he said one day, I'm just in a cab. And he said, I threw up a prayer and just said, God, I'm old, nobody wants me, everybody's dirty. Is there a place for a clean comedian anymore? And he said, on the radio, you were on the radio, on WIP Sports Radio. And he said, they're talking about this comedian doing a fundraiser for something. And he said, so I went home and looked you up. You're pretty good for a kid. Thanks. He said, so can you use an old man like me? And I said, what do you want to do? He said, I'll open for you. I'll do anything. I love performing. I want to do this stuff. And we became friends. And he wrote this book, A PhD in Happiness by the World's Great Comedians. And similar to Marlo Thomas's book, it's 100 people that he's worked with, what they taught him. Some of them, apparently you don't know half the people from the 60s and 70s. Soupy Sales, Phyllis Diller, Joan Rivers, the George Burnses, big stars in Vegas. There's a story of how he met them, what they did or didn't do, and taught him about life, about preparing for a show, about preparing a stage, about just dealing with opposition, about integrity when you get paid or don't get paid. And in the midst of it is also about 500 jokes, really good jokes. And then he just came out with this one just a couple of weeks ago, which again, it's his 100 favorite comedians and their 100 jokes. And also lessons in how to tell them. How do you start a joke? How do you begin? How much detail? How much of your body do you use? How much facial expression do you want to use? How do you keep it short? How do you tell it how you shouldn't do it? How can you tell a dirty joke and just make it naughty? Because that's his thing. He likes to be naughty. He likes to press the envelope. In a club, he had a lot of sexual innuendo, but without having to drop the F-bomb every 30 seconds, which is just about every comedian in every club for the last 20 years. It is just so not funny. I've gone to club after club after club. I do my act and it does well. And then the next guy gets up, some 25, 30-year-old kid gets up there and just, what the F was that? F. Look at that effing thing. Look at this effing thing. Look at that effing thing. Look at so when are you going to tell a joke? Somebody yelled out last week that I was down in Atlantic City at Borgata, the Borgata thing down there. And this guy was just so filthy. And then somebody yelled, when are you going to start your act? I said, when is this going to get funny? And people got up and left. It was just disgusting. It was, and all the money they paid this guy, it was terrible. So, that's about me, about growing up, about business. What I do, half of my events, what I do are fundraisers. I call it hilarity for charity. It's my niche. I found the niche market. I didn't find it, it found me. But if a town has had a flood and they need to rebuild, hey, let's have a comedy show and help this family that lost their house. Somebody's fighting cancer and they can't, insurance doesn't cover, hey, let's have a party and help out Joe battling cancer. Somebody needs a wheelchair van for their handicapped son, they can't afford it. Let's do a comedy show. And it's just over 20 years grown and grown where, I've become the guy that I do about 100 shows a year and 50 of them are fundraisers. And last year was the first year in 10 years I didn't raise over $1 million. It was like $680,000 we raised for different people and different events. So what could be better than having fun and then helping somebody that's going through a tough time, whether it's a person, a family, a block, or a town that's just going through a tough time. And it's a little secret that I found in a book called the Bible that says God loves a cheerful giver. So I get people in a good mood and then ask for money, which is kind of funny. I'm the guy with 19 kids that has no money. But I absolutely love what I do. I absolutely love what I do. And I get, you know, big and small, near and far. It's just fun. So yes, questions. Tell me, I mean, what do you want from this class? What would you like to learn? I mean, I know he does magic.
I have two questions.
Sure.
I have two questions. Can you tell us about your worst gig and your best gig? Not necessarily in that order.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of horror stories. Comedians love to share horror stories. I do a whole thing about how I did a show for the Amish. 600 Amish dairy farmers at Shady Maple. It's like, comedy for the Amish is like Mike Tyson at a spelling bee. That's it just doesn't fit. But it is a true story. They introduced me as the father of 19 kids. I have a video introduction. Maybe I can show that if you want to see that. Introductions are important. But they introduced me as comedian Gordon Douglas, father of 19 kids, and one of the farmers yelled, "Rookie!" I was wondering if the Amish would laugh, and the very first thing, I was heckled by an Amish guy, and that was one of the funniest lines ever. And I've been telling people that's one of my opening jokes. Yeah, the worst gig. I mean, I've done shows with as little as 4 people. I've done shows where half the audience did not speak English. I was up in Toronto at an international ministry thing where they had interpreters and earphones and like nobody spoke English. That would have been nice to know. So you do physical stuff. Off a plane, and my wife picked me up, and it was in downtown Philadelphia, and it was for Officer Jeff Skaworski. He had just been shot. He was shot and killed. I didn't know. I'm doing a breakfast for officers, 500 officers, to honor them. That it was all set up. It was to thank them for serving the city and give them a good time. Rows of tables, beautiful banquet, all set up, great food. And the host came over, and as I got out of the car, he said, "I gotta tell you something. They're not in a very good mood." And he told me what happened. I didn't see the news because I wasn't in Philly. I didn't know. And I go in, and literally 500 officers, and I've done 2 banquets for the National Association of the Deaf, which again, with an interpreter, makes comedy really interesting. But that was quiet, but this was quieter. And they're like, all you hear is these officers, any information? Do we get anything? Do we hear them? Do we have a lead? Do we have they're all whispering. I'm going around thanking them. I usually greet people in the show. I want to find out info because I'm going to get after people in the show. I don't make fun of people, but I will make you part of the show. And wow, this is interesting. And like they're all eating and nobody's saying a word. And they said, we're going to start our show, but the first thing we want to do is have a moment of silence for Officer Jeff. And they had a picture, and they took the thing off, and there's a photo and candles. And they said, we want to recognize his brother and his children the day after he was shot.
Oh, gosh.
The front row is in tears, sobbing. And I don't usually tell people this when I do a show, but I also pastor a church. Honestly, took it off my website. People hear you're a pastor, they don't want to hear it. So I said, folks, obviously this is not a good time for comedy. So if you don't mind, I'm going to put on my pastor's hat. Can I share something that I think will bring you some hope and comfort? And I shared a couple little things in the Bible and a little something. And as they started to relax, I said, I was going to come and tell you about the cop who told a joke. And they looked at me like, you just told a joke. And I said, and if you like that joke, I was going to tell you about the guy who told a joke. And I said, if it was warming up, I was going to kick you with my best joke, and I told 3 jokes, and all of a sudden, they started smiling. They started chuckling a little bit. And just when they started to stop crying, beep, boop, beep, boop, there's a riot on 32nd and 12th. There's a riot. There was 2 high schools, rival high schools, that had the same place for graduation. And they were supposed to be out and next one in, but they came together. Literally, every cop but 12 left. 500 cops got up and left, and then the commander said, sorry, Mr. Douglas, but work comes first. So that was maybe the worst event ever. Yeah, it just, and really tragic circumstances. So some things you can't control. I've had, one of the things you want to do is prepare. What if the shades go up? What if the alarm goes off? I've been in places where the fire alarm goes off because they're cooking something and it goes off. The lights go off, and my first light is, so glad I went to night school. I don't need lights. It's funnier in the dark, but it's like, it's a quick thing. It's not just a quick thing. I picked up and do stuff. But best show ever. I would say best show ever is just the one I did that week. You never know if people are going to laugh. The most fun are cruise ships. You get paid to go on a cruise, and you have to work 2 30-minute shows a day. And most cruise ships, you have the family show and then the dirty show. I don't even do a dirty show. I don't have a dirty show. I just recently did a Disney cruise with Ryan Baumgartner. Ryan the ventriloquist. Ryan? He's a kid. He's like 28. He's right around here. He lives in Lititz. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
He's a ventriloquist that I met when he was 12. And he's won all kinds of awards, and he just signed a deal to do 20 Disney cruises. He's a regular at Good and Plenty restaurant. He does 3 shows a week at 1 o'clock right outside Sight and Sound. He's got like 7 puppets. Again, there's a chapter of them in my book because I can't believe how good this kid is. And he opened for me for years, and now he took me on a Disney cruise. I got to open for him, and what a turnaround! And it's part of what I do when I do a show is tell people where I've been. It keeps it fresh for me. It's like, I'm so glad to be here, man. I've been busy. Like I was in Toronto. It was cold in Toronto. How cold was it? It was so cold, I saw a rap singer pulling up his pants. It was that cold. It was so cold. And I go on so cold jokes. In true story, I just got booked in Alaska. I got 4 shows across Alaska. And I asked if there would be Eskimos, and my agent said, you're not allowed to say Eskimos. That's not politically correct. Yeah, they're now called frozen Americans. So I go through all the places that I've been. Kansas City, I was in Kansas City. Kansas City now has Andy Reid, our former coach. Kansas City has our former coach. He's there. In the first 6 games, he was 6-0. 6-0. He couldn't win a game here. He's 6-0. They were so excited, they named a sandwich after him. It's called the McReed. And it tastes really good, and then you choke on it. So I go through all the places that I've been, and then my most recent one is I was just on a singles cruise. And you know what I learned on a singles cruise? There's a reason some people are single. And I do all kinds of jokes about singles. What age? I talk to people on the show. That's part I want people part of the show. No one's going to sleep or going to take part. So what age would you think is on a singles cruise?
I don't know, probably mid-30s.
Yeah, 20s and 30s. That's what I would think. You would be wrong. It's like 50 and over. Yeah, these people are wrinkled before they get in the hot tub. I'm just saying, it was not what I was expecting. It was an older crowd. I really thought it was going to be like Love Boat. It was good. Love Boat. Yeah. Come on, it's on MeTV. Come on, it was on Love Boat. Yeah, it's on MeTV. It is. You see it MeTV. It's on all the time now. But that was in the 70s, and they have all these famous actors and actresses come on the Love Boat and meet people. And it was just a Carnival cruise ship. So that was fun. I mean, the places that I've gotten to go to, Girl Scout events, Rotary things, senior citizens. I do a lot of senior events. The audience looks like a box of Q-tips. It's just a lot of white puffballs out there. Yeah, there wasn't a dry seat in the house after that show. It was kind of so that's what I do. I do jokes about where I've been. And I tell them about my family, and then I put together a series of jokes. If it's to recognize an officer, if it's to raise money for fighting cancer, if it's to celebrate a church function, if it's trying to think of all the different stuff that people do. I've done birthday parties. That's what I did with Rhonda up in New England last year. This lady saw me at a big event, and she called me and said, my mom loved you, and she's going to be 85 next month. Would you come back and do a show in our backyard? So I invited the whole block. I took Rhonda with me. I set up my sound system, stood in, and all these lawn chairs are in the backyard. right in, right off the coast. I mean, literally, we were across the street from the beach. And comedy outside is hard. The dynamics are much different. Without the walls and roof, it doesn't travel. Shows with less than 100 people, as you can tell tonight, struggle. Milton Berle called it the rule of 80. If you get more than 80 people, comedy doubles. It's just, it's a, not scientific, but it's 50 years of show business. It's just something happens when you get past 80 people. The biggest event I've ever done, it was the State Fair, Pennsylvania State Fair, which is about 15,000 people at the racetrack where they have the horses with the little buggies in the back. They put up a giant stage. After me was Larry the Cable Guy and Sugarland. But I was the opening night of the Pennsylvania State Fair 2 years in a row. And I did the Flyers game. They had a God Family Country night after the hockey game at the Spectrum, the old Spectrum. So that was, no, it seats 17,000, not everybody stayed, but that was a really big event. I've done the Camden River Sharks baseball stadium on 4th of July, stood on home plate in a minor league stadium and did comedy for 4th of July.
Wow.
I do a lot of stuff for the troops. I have a ministry, if I could use the word ministry, I call it Operation Belly Laughs. Bob Hope went overseas for 41 straight years. I send videos. We've done 12,000 videos to men and women serving in the military in 12 different countries so far. As anybody serving in the military anywhere gets a free DVD, usually 2 or 3, because other comedians have donated to me now. And almost every week, every show, I announce that in the show. If you're a parent, if you're a grandparent, isn't that amazing? So we put stuff together and we send out, you know, I call it a little package of joy instead of a, what do they call it when you send a package to your kids at college?
Care package. Care
package, thank you, I'm drawing a blank. Yes, care package. And so I put together this little package with a little letter from home and some stuff, and gotten some of the most amazing letters. Even in the days of internet and laptop and FaceTime, a package from home with a funny video still means a lot to a guy. And since I fly almost every week I'm on a plane with someone coming home from overseas that were on their 2nd and 3rd tour. So I keep them in my briefcase. So I always keep a couple DVDs. And to me, it's to see a soldier coming home to see his family that he's not seen in 16 months or 15 months. And the guy I was with a few weeks ago, he had not seen his daughter. His wife was pregnant when he left, and the daughter was like 8 months old. And he's showing me the pictures and doing stuff. He's sitting next to me on the plane, and they announced, you know, folks, you know, we have officer so-and-so with us. He just served, you know, so many months over in Iraq, and if you don't mind keeping your seats, we want him to get off the plane first. And everyone cheered, and since I was in his row, I got to go out too. But I followed him just because I wanted to watch. I just followed him to get to baggage claim and see the wife with the baby and his little 3-year-old welcome home daddy sign, and all the neighbors there, and oh my goodness, the hugs, the tears, they're crying. I am crying out. I went over to get my rent-a-car, and the lady said, "Can I help you?" And I literally, I was like, I just need a car. I mean, it's just so beautiful. It was so beautiful. How can you not get excited over that? So yeah, other questions? I mean, so yeah, but that's a long answer to best and worst show. You know, sometimes the sound doesn't work. Sometimes people aren't interested. We're eating. It's in my contract, bold letters, underlined. Please, 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 please do not ask me to perform if people are eating. You cannot laugh and eat at the same time. And almost every banquet, dinner runs late. Would you mind going up and getting started? No, I can't. I can't go up there and do comedy when 300 people are in the buffet line, or they're sitting there eating. They'll do this if they're even listening, because I cannot compete with strawberry shortcake. It's dessert time, so it's in my contract. Tables have to be cleared. Nobody can be walking around. Shut everything down, because it just doesn't work. It's simply, if you want to pay all that money to bring me in, then make sure that they're going to enjoy the program. Because people say, "Oh, he wasn't very good." It wasn't me, because it wasn't set up right.
Can you share the Anita Renfro incident?
Which one? When I got called up?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
In fact, that's an interesting video as well. Anita Renfro is the 2nd most famous female comedian in the last 10 years. Yeah, I don't know if you know. The Mom Song, does the Mom Song ring a bell? The Mom Song, it's gotten 35 million hits on YouTube. Check it out. The Mom Song. It's 100 things a mom says to their kids to the tune of the Lone Ranger. I'm your mother. I said so. And I sit up straight, but don't comb your hair, brush your teeth right now. But it's a brilliant song. I was with her the first night she ever did it, and she had not memorized it. It was on 3x5 cards, which again is not very professional. But the song was so good, she got a 10-minute standing ovation.
Wow.
We were in the green room. She said, Gordon, I'm going to try something new tonight. Go out in the audience. It's 6,000 women. Which again, women are so much better. Women audiences are so much better than men audiences. Statistically, 7 times better. They laugh 7 times more than men. So I'm sitting out there, and you can even see it in the video. I'm sitting out there. She does this song. She gets like a 10-minute standing ovation. She comes off the stage back in the green room. I'm sitting there. I said, Anita, it's not going to work. 10-minute standing ovation. You need to know whether I liked your song or not. Are you kidding me? Her kids put it on YouTube. This was 10 years ago, and it's gotten 35 million hits. She's been on Good Morning America. She's been on The View. She's been on The Tonight Show. She has traveled to, I think, 30 countries, all because of one song.
Wow.
That Justin Fennell wrote one night at the CCA in a hotel. He helped her write the song as we were just sitting around. And so she's now doing stadiums. And so she's going to be at the Hershey Arena last Christmas. And that seats, I think, about 10,000 people, the Hershey Arena right outside Hershey Park. They have sports events and stuff there. It's where Wilt Chamberlain scored his 100-point game. Little sports trivia for you. But I get off a plane, and I get in a car, and I hear on the radio the concert with Anita Renfro has been canceled. She and Steve Curtis-Chapman and some Amy Grant, some people there. It's going to be a big Christmas show. And it got canceled. They didn't sell enough tickets. So Anita posted on Facebook, hey, I'm in Philadelphia. Find me a place that has 1,000 seats or more. Let's do a free show. I'm already here. I feel bad for all the people who bought tickets. Let's just do a free show. Within minutes, my church is available. We seat 2,000 people. Great, put it on Facebook. Whoever wants to come, come. No tickets, no anything. So I drive home, and my wife's at work. I called and said, are you coming home now? I got to work late. I said, well, Anita was going to do the show, and I just got home, but she's going to be in the Philadelphia area. Do you care if I go? So I call Anita, and she said, oh, come, let's hang out. So I go and I meet her, and they're doing all the sound checks, and she does a lot of pictures and video stuff and music stuff. She sings beautifully, does a lot of singing impersonations. Faith Hill and Christina Aguilera, she does singing impersonations and spoofs on their songs, Miley Cyrus stuff, that kind of stuff. It's really good. So we talk a little bit. We're getting ready for the show. She's going to do her makeup, so I go out and I take a seat. Just enjoying the show. She has brilliant stand-up, and then she does great song parodies. And I'm just sitting there enjoying the show, and I tap on my back. I turn around. There's her husband. He said, oh, Gordon, I forgot to tell you, you're on in 15 seconds.
Oh.
Anita is going to, and she traps up the song, and again, there's a video of it on YouTube, Anita Renfro and Gordon, because I didn't know. She just said, my friend Gordon is here, and he's a comedy legend. She called me a comedy legend. And he found out I was here tonight, and he drove right from the airport to come and see us tonight. Would you like to hear Gordon for a few minutes? That's like, so the theme of the story as I mentor people is always be ready. Always be ready to do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or it takes a while to get 30 minutes of an act, but to be ready. And I actually, as I was driving the hour to the show, I thought, I'm not going to ask her if I can go on with her. It's a free show. But people are always asking me, can I open, can I do that? And you just can't. You just, I've got a host, I keep people, it's hard to risk a show. I'll take anybody with me when I can. But I was driving up and I just thought, wow. I usually do a 1-hour show. I've been spoiled for 10 years doing a 1-hour show. I don't do many, but I thought, if she called me up, what would I do? Do one 10-minute bit, or would I do 5 2-minute bits? And I actually wrote myself a little outline. I thought I could do this, this, and this. And when she called me up, I did it, and it went phenomenally well. First, because she opened up with the mom song. Everyone's standing ovation. They're there doing a free show, so that was a great experience. But one of the things Anita taught me about business back before she was quite that famous is she was coming to Baltimore to do a show. And So I saw that and I called her, I said, Anita, while you're in Baltimore, why don't you come to Philly and do a fundraiser for our church group? And so, at that time, I think it was like $1,500 for her big show. And she said, I said, I could maybe get you $500, but I want to raise money for this. And she said, I'll be glad to do that. And then we set it up for weeks ahead, months, posters, got everything all set up. And she called me the day before the show and said, Gordon, they just canceled. My show in Baltimore just canceled. And she said, but I want you to know, I'm going to keep my word. I'm going to come and do that show. And she drove from South Carolina up to visit a friend in Baltimore that she stayed with. And then she and her friend came and did the show for very little money.
Wow.
Because she said, I gave you my word. I would feel terrible if I just backed out. Because Anita taught me, have integrity if you keep your word. So sometimes that's as important as being funny. The most successful people in comedy are not always the funniest ones. They're easy to get along with. That's funny.
I like it.
Everybody's got a sense of humor, and it can all get better. Just like anybody can learn to swing a bat and hit a ball, but some are going to be better than others. But I didn't know if the goal was, because usually when we do our conferences, and John's been to a couple of them, we usually have 200-300 people at a conference, and locally maybe 50, 60, maybe not even, maybe 50. But almost everybody that comes to our yearly comedy conference for 2 days, they want to do what I do. and I want to do what Anita does, and I want to do what they do. I mean, it's always, that's for me. But if the goal is just to be funnier, I mean, Tommy Moore's book on how to tell a joke and some of the basics on there are great. If you're going to actually get into writing, that could be a whole different seminar. Writing jokes versus stealing other people's jokes. and what is it considered stealing versus borrowing, and what's a classic joke, what's public domain? Hardcore club comedians are very, very, very protective about their material. It's their livelihood, it's their act. But there are stock jokes. Obviously, I've got like 10 joke books up here. Complete book of insults, jokes, and riddles. When I started in the 70s, this is what Gene Perrette gave me. He said, go memorize 10 ugly jokes, fat jokes, bald jokes, dumb jokes, and if somebody heckles you, you bury them.
Ooh.
That's how you got trained in the 70s. So I did. It's like, you're so ugly, your mom is so ugly, you're so fat, you're so, that kind of stuff. That's not my personality, first of all. But I was terrified of being heckled. Like, what do you do? The best way not to be heckled is to be funny. If you're funny, hecklers don't get a chance to get in. But even the best get heckled. And I'm going to guess most of you don't know Tim Hawkins. Tim Hawkins, he's the #1 guy in the Christian world right now. And very, very, very much like Robin Williams. High energy, brilliantly creative. He's probably got 15 videos out by now. He's probably got 400 clips on YouTube. He gives all this stuff away. But I went to see him. Again, he does stadiums. He does like big events, 3,000 to 10,000 people. And he was on stage. Me and my 19 kids are in row 37 in the back in the upper deck because he gave me free tickets for me and my kids. So we're all the way at the top, and I'm watching him. The more stage, the more you walk. You work the stage. Don't let people get to, you got to keep walking. Walking back and forth makes people stay attention. That's a little trick from Chris Rock. You ever watch how he performs? And I'm watching Tim Hawkins go back and forth, and in the midst of his opening 5 minutes, somebody yelled a suggestion, maybe do this bit or sing this song. Or, I don't know what they yelled, but Tim Hawkins stopped. Again, he's a Christian comedian. Well, no, he doesn't. He calls himself a clean comedian. He does clean comedy, but it was in a church, and he is a Christian. But in either case, he stopped and he said, "Did you hear that?" And the whole place hushed. And he starts walking. I could have sworn I heard something. I think somebody yelled at me. I'm in a church with 5,000 people, and someone yelled at me. I can't believe it. I can't believe someone would heckle me, Tim Hawkins. But I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian. What can I do? I can't tell them they're ugly. I can't tell them they're fat. I can't tell them they're stupid. I got to think, what would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? And I think I know what he would do. He would say, "Shut up!" And he screams. And the whole place roared.
Wow.
But he put the guy in his place. He set the tone like, hey, we don't call out in the middle of a show. He got 2 minutes of just great comedy, which a big part of comedy is you create attention and then you twist, you release it, you twist, you give it an unexpected end to it. And I that was the most brilliant handling of a heckler. And in clubs, when people have had too much to drink, they are much more participatory, and you have to learn how to handle that. But in terms of favorite jokes or writing jokes, in my 1 hour act, I have a whole section. Often I have kids. I suggest to my audience, 10 years old and up. But sometimes I do an event where it's family night, and there will be babies, there will be 3-year-olds in there. And I can't do a show for 4th graders. I can do a couple jokes, like, what's the difference between boogers and broccoli? You don't know, I'm not coming to your house for dinner. But that's okay. The booger jokes, you gotta have some booger jokes. You gotta have some knock-knock jokes. But I have a couple little kid jokes, and I have jokes for 12 and 13-year-olds, but I have a little bit just to keep them involved. ADD. Have you noticed I have ADD? I've never been officially diagnosed ADD. I just went online, I started to take a test. I quit. It was way too long. I love that ADD joke. So I was asking you what kind of jokes that you want to do. In my act, that's what the children part is. I will invite kids under 10 to come up on stage and do Art Linkletter. You're the only one here that's going to know Art Linkletter, right? You don't know Art Linkletter, right?
No, I never heard of it.
He had a talk show in the 60s, and part of every show is he would interview 4 little kids, usually about 4 years old. He would interview them about politics or stuff, and it was hilarious. Bill Cosby did a remake of Kids Say the Darndest Things.
Right.
That came out of Art Linkletter. But what Art Linkletter did for 5 minutes, Bill Cosby tried to do for an hour, and it didn't work. And the kids that Bill Cosby was interviewing were teenagers and trained and wanted to be actors and tried to be funny. The little 4-year-old that he brought out of the audience that was picking his nose, that was funny because it was innocent. And so part of my show is I bring little kids up. Part of my show is I will do an ethnic joke, and just to see the response. And I said, you like ethnic jokes? I love ethnic jokes, but I don't think you should insult people. We're in a culture where you have to be. And then I'll do 10 minutes of it. If it works, I'll keep doing ethnic jokes. If little kid jokes work, I'll keep doing. I tell people when I go on stage, it's like a pitcher. I go up there, and if my curveball's not working, I better have a slider or a changeup. And I have certain jokes that are categorized in my brain, but I have an outline when I go up. Some people are like, how do you remember the jokes? Well, I could do my 1 hour show now word for word, but a lot of guys, when they go up, they'll have a bottle of water. They'll just write the jokes on the bottle of water. You don't want to go up with a card in your hand and say, knock, knock, or did you hear about the blonde? Yeah, that's not, you gotta, if you're only doing 3 jokes, you gotta know your 3 jokes. If you're only doing 5, and a lot of times people go over and they get a sip and they've got their set list on the bench. Again, even that's how you learn, but you're not going to get paid. If you can't do 15 minutes without knowing, then you're not ready to be paid. Well, I don't have time to work on new jokes, like going and trying out new material. So Mike Williams, who's my teacher, my mentor, and he said, Gordon, every night try to do a new joke and do it between 2 of your A jokes. And usually grade your material, my A jokes, my B jokes, and maybe a C. You can't just hit home run, home run, home run, home run, home run. You've got to pace things. So he said, take your 2 of your best jokes and try your new joke in between. And if it works, then the next show add a line to it, the next show add a line to it, the next show add a line to it. And he said, in about 6-8 weeks, you're going to have 2 new minutes that you're going to have polished. Now again, that's doing 2-3 shows a week. You work on it. David Farrell is a really gifted comedian, and he said what really helped him, he was driving the bus from the airport to the parking lot, just picking up people at the airport going to go get their cars. And he was doing comedy for like 10 years. This is what he did. He said it was the best training because every 10 minutes he would have a new audience in his van. And he would tell the joke over and over and over. And when you do it about 100 times, all of a sudden, I changed that word, I changed this thing, I gave a little more expression. So how does that relate? And you guys, you can tell the joke at work or at home, or try it on this, try it on there, try it different ways. And the more you repeat it, your personality comes out. Very few can do over 30. It takes Jerry Seinfeld said it took him 10 years before he could do an hour. An hour is a long time. To tell one joke after another, but the advice would be, there's books, there's things that will help you think better, write better. I love reading joke books. I probably got 100 joke books. And each one, you can't sit and read a joke book cover to cover. But like 5 a day, 10 a day, you find stuff that you like, find writers. I mean, Milton Berle has 2 volumes this big. Each volume has 10,000 jokes. So when I was in New Hampshire, I'll wrap up with this one. I'm in New Hampshire a couple weeks ago, and in my hotel is the NASCAR convention. They were having a race. It was the last NASCAR race of the year, and it was back in October, November, and it was the last NASCAR race ever in New Hampshire. They were closing down the racetrack. But in my hotel, it's just filled with guys, Team Toyota, Team Chevy, all the drivers, all the pit crews, and they're all hanging around the bar and the pool, a beautiful hotel. And I was actually sitting there going over my show for the night, and they all came in at once. They were done the time trials. The race was the next day. And now I'll come in, so we start chit-chat. What do you do? What do you do? I said, oh, I got a show tonight. It's right in the Grand Ballroom. Why don't you come in? And I said, I'm not into NASCAR. I don't get it. Like, what's the big deal? Why do people, it's just a lot of money to watch cars go in a circle. But I said, what does it stand for? I don't even know. What does NASCAR stand for? And I found out it's a non-athletic sport centered around rednecks.
Okay.
And Jeff Foxworthy said it actually came when 2 hillbillies came to a race. They saw the car and said, that there's a nice car right there. That's a NASCAR. So I actually will, if I'm doing a thing for milk farmers, if I'm doing a thing for truckers, if I'm doing a thing for dancers, I'll call my wife and say, go get Milton Berle, look up. He's got like 50 jokes on every subject you can think of. And she'll read through and get me a couple jokes, and then I kind of rework them how I would say them. And again, you can go online and do that now too. But I mean, Milton Berle is one of the funniest guys ever, and Gene Perret's books are just fantastic. So, but funny's good. I mean, hopefully, it makes you feel better. There is medical proof that if you laugh 20 times a day, that your blood pressure goes down, your immune system goes up, you feel better, people around you feel better. He asked 4 Miss America contestants, what do you look for in a husband? And like 4 or 5, whatever the finalists were, they all said sense of humor. Not good looking, not wealthy, not the Bachelor on TV. It's a key to so many relationships. Just being able to laugh at yourself, laugh at the situations. There's a chapter in my book about humor in the Holocaust. I mean, you'd think people in a prisoner of war camp, what kept them going is they would make fun of the soldiers to show Hogan's Heroes. Hogan's Heroes was all a reaction. Every actor on Hogan's Heroes was Jewish. Did you know that?
No.
And they would only do the show if they made fun of the Germans. It was still part of their healing and also part of their survival. I don't know about every actor, but there were many. I have to watch my words. You got to be careful with every actor. But yeah, so amazing stuff. So hey, I'll be glad to stick around for a few minutes. I do have a book if you want to see it, but I did just write this. It's got 150 jokes, a lot of stories, more about how I started, how I got on shows, people that I met, and some inspirational and stuff in there too. So hopefully it was beneficial. It was a good hour.
Sure.
You will be funnier.
I had a dream last night, and
He is the dream expert.
Carol Burnett was in my dream. I knew you were coming tonight, and you actually mentioned her name. And in the dream, I said to Carol Burnett that you make people laugh so that they might sing joyful songs. That was my dream. And I think that's a word for all of us. Why do we do this? Why do we want to make other people laugh? So that we can bring joyful songs, bring the joy to people's lives, because obviously they need it. So Gordon, thank you so much for coming and sharing your life, your comedy.